please feel free to take up the stage.
Right.
And if you have any questions, just a quick reminder, please do scan the QR code and it will be on the slider. We can have questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, hi everyone. Thanks for joining me today at this session. Actually, a lot more people than I thought, but I'm sure you will learn actually a great deal from this. I'm going to be talking about the attention equation. It's something that after about 1,000 events a year, right, that I have distilled and come up with 5 different factors that we need to look for in as many brand activations as possible. Things that you can increase and decrease in order to achieve the best results that you can. Alright, so first thing that you probably need to understand is I have a creative tech agency, right? So that's where all these different 1,000 projects are going to come from. Now, first thing that I learned from all of this is that we need to understand the audience doesn't owe us their attention. We need to earn it. Alright, can we understand this base underlying fact? Everyone agrees? Alright, fantastic. So, how do we earn it? It goes through a process where they trade their attention for something that we provide to them. Alright? Now, this is what I call a value exchange. So, key underlying thing, every activation is a value exchange. So, examples here, the audience can give their time, their data, the effort that they have to put in, right? Social risk, sometimes even money. Sometimes they're flying to a certain place even to experience a certain kind of activation for really large ones. And in return, what does the brand give? Sometimes it's gifts, sometimes it's experiences, memory, utility, status, and sometimes even just pure entertainment. Alright? So, let's start with a story. This is an event in Singapore. It's a B2C event. Alright, and it's an electronics trade show that happens 4 times a year. Now, in this trade show, there is an area on the floor that's marked out where participants have to come here and submit a set of survey questions. 23 questions worth. Now, if I were to ask you, who here will fill up a 23 question survey? Anyone? No one, right? So, let's guess. With an activation like this, filling up a 23 question survey, they get to receive a prize. How many submissions do you think they get over a 4-day period? Who thinks A? Right, very practical, realistic people. Who thinks B? Hundreds. Alright, some hopeful people there. Who thinks C? Thousands. Alright, one optimist. Glass half full all the time? Alright, so answer is thousands. Does that mind boggle you a bit? Like, how can it be thousands of leads, thousands of people filling up a 23 question survey? You'll see later. Alright, so some of you may think, B2C, it's a certain kind of animal. How about B2B? Much tougher crowd, right? Everything's a lot more serious, everything's a lot more structured, everything's a lot more formal. So, here's a different activation. In a 4-day cybersecurity conference, right? Very B2B, very dry, technical in nature. There's an activation that gives out kombucha, alright? And in this activation, we have an AI recommender at play, which is an AI that takes a photo of the guest, of the visitor to the activation, and then describes the visitor, and then makes a recommendation so that the recommendation feels personalized. Alright? And then that recommendation is what's given out to the visitor. So, imagine for this brand, how many leads do you think they can get from an activation like this? Who thinks A? Wow, none of you. Okay, who thinks B? 100 plus leads over 4 days. Alright. Very likely, very likely. Who thinks 1,000 plus leads? Who gets 1,000 plus leads in a B2B event? Sponsor. Okay, to be fair, this is a really big brand. Alright, so they do usually have good traffic. Usually they get B. With this activation, they get C. you get thousands of leads. So again, how can this be done? Now, I'm going to take you through what I believe is the inner monologue of visitors and brand activation. Okay, so imagine someone goes to a trade show or goes to an atrium at a shopping mall or goes to anywhere that you're setting up an activation, right? Maybe in your shop. So they're walking by and they go, what's that? Okay, I see some people have their eyes open wide now because of this person. That's actually what you really want, right? Now, next thing they'll think, interesting, what would I get? Can you relate, right? What would I get? Now, next thing they'll think, will it be worth it? Do I stop right now? Will it be worth it for me to give it my attention? And then they'll start assessing, what do I need to do to get it? And then, if they say, okay, let's try, let's do it. Next thing, once they start, they'll ask, when's the first interesting thing that's going to happen for me? So, putting all that together, you can, as marketers, I'm sure you can see a funnel going on there, right? Now, putting it all together, the equation is attention earned is equal to the visibility multiplied by the perceived reward multiplied by perceived certainty divided by the friction to participate and the time to delight. Alright, I'll stand aside so you all get this. But you get all this in the deck later on. Alright? Now, what's important to understand? Why is this an equation? Why not just dump it in the list? Because you want to understand two things. The first is that every factor has a multiplicative effect on each other. Second is everything above, right? The visibility, perceived reward, and perceived certainty, you want to increase. And everything below, the friction to participate and the time to delight, you want to decrease. Right? Make sense? Fantastic. So let's dive into some examples. Alright, so here's a very standard kind of activation that you might find at a trade show booth. You put a little photo booth over there, stand like this. Here's a different kind where you have a large screen where people are interacting with. Which one do you think would get more engagement? Who thinks this one? Who thinks this one? Right. So, answer is this, right? And the reason is simply because, okay, let's take away all other factors. The biggest reason that's obvious is because of how visible it is. Because, remember, all the way at the top of the funnel, it's, what's that? And I'll get you to the actual thought process, the thing to really take away from this in a bit, after this example. Here's a very, very similar set of examples again. Alright, this is an activation with Adidas. Right, they were launching perfumes. You have the visitors signing on something onto the perfume bottle. That design gets put up on a wall. Right, now this wall is a 55 or 65-inch TV screen right in front of them. Another example on the left is at the National Museum of Singapore. During National Day, you have the crowd coming in and taking photos, submitting messages about what makes Singapore special for them. Which one do you think gets more engagement? Who thinks this one? Who thinks this one? Great. So catching on. Greater the screen, greater the visibility, greater the likelihood of engagement. So here's the idea. If people don't even know that it's happening, whatever they are offering as the reward doesn't matter at all. Right? They'll just miss it, just skip it. So how do you increase visibility? This is what people talk about, differentiating yourself, right? I want something new, I want to stand out from the crowd. First thing is you need to get visibility. And it comes in the form of screens, sounds, animations, right? If you have a static screen versus an animated screen, it makes a very big difference. You have crowd-facing designs so that the crowd who's walking by can actually see all the things that's happening, that engagement is actually happening with the people who's using it. And size matters, alright? No matter what anyone says, this one actually is Very obvious here. Now, the difference between these two activations is about 3 times. All right, so next one, perceived reward. It's when they ask, what do I get? So one example could be, remember all the way at the start, how do you get thousands of leads? First thing is you advertise, apart from the visibility, you're advertising what are you going to give to the people who are going to participate. So in this case, they advertise $250,000 worth of prizes. Now, if you know that there's $250,000 worth of prizes, are you more likely to participate? Are you more likely to engage? Yes, right? Great. So here's another kind of example. Remember the personalized AI recommender that I was referring to earlier, giving out kombucha? Another example, giving out perfume. Using the exact same technology, getting the exact same kind of result. Many, many more times the engagement than any other kind of standard giveaways. You can even give entertainment, right? It's an AI video booth. You see that little moment of delight, that some of you see this and smile, right? That is actually a value that you're giving to visitors to activations as well. And that moment of delight, that perceived reward that you're going to get, increases the chances of activations happening. All right, so here's a really interesting one. Same kind of technology. It's a face-swap technology. I'm sure you've seen like a ton of face-swap photo booths out there. That was done for the Amazon Prime release of The Rings of Power, Season 2, where Sauron is the villain, right? But it is a backstory of it, and he takes on the human form. So we wanted to create this kind of concept where you stare into the darkness and it stares back at you. So it's almost like a magic mirror effect where you're standing there and Sauron's face turns into yours. Right, so little moments of delight like this also create story worth sharing, and that's contributing to the virality. So, what to remember, that reward doesn't need to be expensive, it just needs to be perceived to be worth that attention. Alright, so nothing that needs to say, if I'm not giving away a car or a holiday, then my price is not worth it. But there are many ways to create that perception of worth. Most important thing, ties back to visibility, showcasing the rewards. If you have a great reward and all you have is a little mention of it, that's not going to work. Right? So you need to showcase the rewards you're getting. You can have one big reward and many small ones. You can have a lot of personalization, because that's actually a really great tool, especially with AI right now, right? The personalization that you can create, that actually helps to increase the perceived worth. And if you can write on trends, like for example, Zhang Yinghe in the image earlier, that helps as well. Okay, so last thing at the top, perceived certainty. Now I'm going to tell you another story. This is a government event from quite a few years ago. All right, and as with all government events that attract people, they were giving away free stuff, right? And they advertise that free stuff a lot, really high visibility, really high perceived reward. So there was a man who queued up for about 45 minutes, part of it under the hot sun, to get into this tentage where we had really great activations there, really great distribution of free stuff there. And he came and asked, "Excuse me, can you tell me what did I queue up for?" Everyone is queuing, so I know I have to queue. But can you tell me what is it I queued up for? As Singaporeans, I'm sure a lot of you in the room are, I'm sure you can relate. You see a queue, you join it. Right? Happens in hawkers as well. And this is actually something that it's human psychology, right? That the moment you see people give attention to something, you also want to find out what it's about. And because it increases your perceived certainty that that thing is worth it. Right? 20 people queuing for Hokkien Mee versus no one queuing for it. Which queue do you join? Assuming you have time. Or maybe even sometimes if you have no time, you still join the long queue. Right? Because it's more perceived as worth it. So same thing, when you create activations, you want crowd-facing designs so the crowd can see what's happening. And the crowd is not just an outcome. It is actually a mechanism at play. Meaning to say that There's more crowd means there's more people who will also participate as a result. Okay, so here's another way to increase perceived certainty by telling them what's happening through an activation. So imagine if your activation is 3 minutes long. Sometimes you're going to get confused, sometimes you're going to get bored and stuff. But if you keep creating different ways to re-engage through micro-actions, right? So for example, telling you how many rounds are left in a game. For example, creating multiple stages in a, spot the difference kind of game as well. All right, and all these can be applied in trade show booths, in showrooms, in many other kind of activation areas too. Leaderboards, another very classic example of increased perceived certainty, right? You see more people participating, higher scores, that means that people are actually giving it their attention, and that has that compounding effect too. Community submissions, we've seen this one before. More people submitting, more people standing in front of the large screen, taking photos, submitting, making their submissions. All these all help to increase. So, your visible results, progress bar, clear instructions, leaderboards, and crowds. Now, thing to remember, people need proof before and as they participate. Alright, now we come to the bottom parts. Friction to participate. Now, where is one queue that you see really long ones? You hope you don't want to join. Airports, right? Check-in, security screening. That's why people pay for fast track and all the other kind of stuff to try to avoid those queues. So, but you're going on a holiday, so the perceived reward is really high. And you can overcome this friction to participate. Alright? So, but in an activation, they don't know whether that reward is high enough. So you need to reduce this friction to participate as much as you can. Alright, so if you remember this, one of the ways to reduce friction to participate is to have fast-moving queues. Having multiple stations, having a turnaround, having people see that something is happening, it's going to be my turn soon, actually helps with that psychology. Now, if I break down a typical kind of activation across a few different steps, a few different levels, all right? A lot of them start with scanning a QR code. Now, so that's the first step, getting them to whip out their phone and over there, forward and press, right? So it's okay, it's a very low friction, but then it gets on to filling out a form. So if your form has 3 to 5 questions, that's fine. But if your form is 23 questions, like what the example I gave earlier, that's a challenge. So this, from blue, it becomes red. Okay, so that's why give data is down there. But after filling out a form, if they're going to have to wait for, let's say, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, that could still be okay. But if it goes into a 1 minute, 2 minute long wait with nothing much happening, then you have a problem. People will start feeling awkward. Once they feel awkward, you have not great kind of feelings and perception of your brand all associated with it as well. If they still have to learn rules about your activation, because you want them to take certain types of actions that's related to your brand messaging, and you have even more problems there. If there's even more about stepping into a public view where they have to perform certain actions in view of everyone around, as Asians especially, right? We don't like to do that. So all these become the really tough things. And the last one, of course, is giving data. I'm sure it's a challenge, a lot more in B2C than B2B, because B2B there's more commercial nature to it, but still it's a challenge, especially if you're going to ask 23 questions. So, how do you reduce that friction to participate? First thing is, don't download and install apps. No one likes that. Alright? Split up your questions if you can. If you have 20 questions to ask, maybe you ask 10 at the start, 5 in the middle, or 5 at the start, 10 in the middle, and 5 at the back. Alright? Maybe you lose some data along the way, but you also will gain more as an overall. Include progress bars so that they know that they're progressing. Have succinct questions, and you can also do a trick called masking waiting time. So I don't have much time left. I'm going to go through with you the last portion, right? About time to delight. Now this is a very quick one because time to delight is a very psychological thing. And there are many ways to mask this so that it feels that it's earlier than otherwise. So here's an example. It's a virtual scavenger hunt activation where you're going through a certain venue or you're going through a certain roadshow with multiple different checkpoints that you want people to complete. Now, every single checkpoint that's completed gives a little dopamine hit that goes, oh yes, I completed something, I achieved something. This helps to create a perception that the time to delight each round actually is shorter than otherwise. What you can do, micro rewards, same progress bar, have clear instructions, etc. Now, the faster the payoff, the more the attention compounds. But let me put this together for you. Alright, so remember the full equation: visibility, perceived reward, perceived certainty over friction to participate, and time to delight. Now, come back to this. What was the visibility? It was an entire area marked out on the show floor with large panels, with a 55-inch TV. Alright? Not super great visibility, but pretty good nonetheless. It's not like one little iPad there. Right? Perceived reward, they're shouting about $250,000 worth of prizes. Pretty good chance that it catches people's attention and go, maybe it's worth it. Perceived certainty. As they queue, they see people in front. The queue starts forming first because of the 23 questions, right? They're standing there filling it up. But as it goes on, people are actually watching the others in front successfully winning prizes. Every time they win, you see you have won some prize. And that creates that little dopamine hit again for every single person at the back going, it's about to be my turn soon. I'm going to win something next. Maybe I'm the one to win that $10,000 massage chair, right? Now, friction to participate. This is the one that they did really poorly for the 23 question survey. But you can see that because of the other things at the top, it really helps them to still achieve the results anyway. So it doesn't mean that you have something that is really high friction or really low perceived reward or really low certainty, etc. That just one factor can cause your entire activation to fail. It's just about maximizing as much as you can. Now, about to end. Remember this other activation. You have, this is an AI recommender. And in that same cybersecurity event that I was telling you about, where they got 1,000+ leads. How that happened? There were people who were using their phones to scan QR codes to go through this recommender experience, where again they take photos of themselves. The AI describes them and then makes a recommendation of something for them to get. Now, before revealing that recommendation, this brand also added 3 questions to answer. Now, these 3 questions are really smart questions that you can add. Think about how you can do it for yourself. So, first question they asked was, what is the size of your organization's cloud security team? What's your organization's annual cloud security budget? What current solution are you using for whatever that they were selling? Thousands of responses from that. Can you imagine the enriched lead information that you get from a single activation event? Alright, now the masked waiting time happens because the recommendation, however long it takes, is masked by having to answer the questions. Right? And there are many more ways to mask this across different experiences as well. I'm going to skip some of these because there's not enough time, but all these actually can apply not just to physical activations, digital campaigns, and many other ways as well. Something like that can get right now 1.2 billion views on TikTok. Alright, so we do have many other frameworks that we've been working on throughout all these different thousands of activations projects a year that help in lead generation and viral campaigns, including things like experiential lead generation and engagement, where we look at different ways to go through the building of an activation itself, as well as how to create virality in some certain types of campaigns. Alright? Now, if you want this entire deck, okay, I think I know what to say. I see the phone's coming out. I'm going to step away. Alright, so you can download this deck over here, and I hope you enjoy your Sunday session, learn something. If you want to have a chat, feel free. We're at the corner at the front entrance there. Alright, have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly check if anyone had any questions, which we can take.